Donald Trump built his political identity on fear. For almost a decade, he ruled the Republican Party with a kind of force that didn't require armies or laws. Just one threat, one post, one insult, and entire careers would crumble. Governors would tremble. Senators would fold. State lawmakers would rewrite bills overnight just to avoid being targeted. Trump believed that fear was permanent, that once he owned a party, he owned it forever. But what he never prepared for was the moment when the fear would evaporate and the silence behind it would feel louder than any protest. That moment arrived in the most unexpected place, Indiana, a state he won easily, a state he assumed was securely under his influence, a state he believed he could push around without resistance. Trump thought he could simply demand 2 new congressional seats, pressure lawmakers to gerrymander the map to his liking, and get his way as always. He imagined the same ritual unfolding, a stern message, a few threats, and Republicans scrambling to obey. Instead, he ran into something he didn't recognize: hesitation. Indiana Republicans didn't leap into action. They didn't seem eager to attach their names to a plan that looked blatantly self-serving. Some of them were worried about voters who were already frustrated with political games. Others were scared that helping Trump now could damage their own future campaigns. And a few simply didn't want to be dragged into another one of his messy battles. Their hesitation wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. But quiet resistance is still resistance. And for Trump, that silence was terrifying. He tried to shake it off at first. He told himself they were just slow. He believed they would eventually fold because they always had before. But as hours turned into days, and the Republicans he expected obedience from continued ignoring him, the panic began to creep in. He needed someone to force the issue, someone he trusted to bring Indiana into submission. That's when he reached for JD Vance. Trump saw Vance as the perfect messenger, loyal, aggressive, and eager to prove himself. In Trump's imagination, Vance would walk into Indiana, flash his title as a U.S. Senator, deliver Trump's orders, and walk out victorious. But the performance Trump envisioned never happened. Instead, Vance walked into a room of people who weren't impressed, weren't intimidated, and weren't interested in being lectured. Reports suggest Vance tried everything: persuasion, warnings, maybe even a hint of Trump's signature pressure tactics. But nothing worked. Lawmakers listened politely and moved on with their day. Some insiders even joked afterward that Vance overestimated his own influence. To them, he was just another politician trying to throw his weight around without understanding the room. For Trump, Vance's failure was more than disappointing. It was humiliating. It revealed something he didn't want to admit. Even his hand-picked loyalists couldn't move the needle for him anymore. And if JD Vance couldn't do it, he needed someone with more authority, someone with more power, someone who owed him everything. He reached for Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Johnson was supposed to be Trump's ace card, the speaker he helped create, the loyalist who repeated Trump's lines word for word, the political puppet he believed he could control with a single phone call. If anyone could pressure Indiana to obey, Trump believed it was Johnson. Johnson made the call, set up the conversation, and tried to push Republican Senate leader Roderick Bray toward Trump's plan. But Bray didn't budge. He didn't flinch. He didn't even pretend to consider it. He simply said no. And the most damaging part, Johnson couldn't do anything about it. In that moment, Johnson wasn't a powerful speaker. He wasn't Trump's trusted enforcer. He was a man exposed, a leader who didn't actually lead, a messenger who didn't get results, a symbol of how weak Trump's grip had become. The Speaker of the House had put Trump's demands directly in front of Indiana's Republican leadership, and they brushed him off like a minor inconvenience. For Trump, this wasn't just a political setback. It was a psychological blow. If Mike Johnson couldn't produce results, then who could? The panic finally burst into the open when Trump stormed onto Truth Social and unleashed a furious tirade. He accused Indiana Republicans of being cowards. He warned them they would pay politically. He insisted they owed him after he delivered the state in a landslide. It was classic Trump, loud, hostile, desperate to regain control through intimidation. But something happened that he wasn't used to. Nobody moved. Nobody rushed to explain themselves. Nobody begged for forgiveness. Nobody scrambled to change course. Trump's angry message landed like a stone in water. It made a splash, then vanished beneath the surface. The silence was devastating. It told him something that no poll, no advisor, no rally crowd could ever say directly. He wasn't feared anymore. And once fear disappears, power collapses behind it. While Trump was spiraling, Democrats were watching closely. They saw the weakness. They saw the hesitation, and they saw an opportunity they hadn't had in years. Pete Buttigieg stepped forward with a sharp, steady message aimed at Indiana Republicans. But instead of sounding enraged, he sounded calm, almost disappointed. He framed the entire situation as Republican lawmakers feeling ashamed of what they were doing, ashamed of how they were caving to outside pressure, and ashamed of choosing political manipulation over the people they represented. His speech spread quickly. It energized Democrats across the state. And worst of all for Trump, it resonated with moderates who were growing tired of political trickery. Buttigieg didn't just call out Republicans, he called out the weakness behind their hesitation. He made it clear that even they could see the wrongdoing, even if they weren't brave enough to admit it. That message cut deeper than any insult Trump posted online. While that battle raged in Indiana, another disaster continued brewing for the GOP. The fallout from the Epstein-related vote in Congress. The vote had been chaotic, confusing, and politically damaging. It exposed deep fractures within the Republican Party and left lawmakers furious at Johnson's inability to manage the situation. Rumors swirled that Trump had pushed too hard behind the scenes, pressuring Johnson into a strategy that backfired spectacularly. The Epstein vote had already left the speaker bruised. The Indiana failure left him broken. Republicans no longer looked at Johnson as a leader. They saw a man drowning under Trump's expectations. They saw someone who couldn't deliver, someone who couldn't command loyalty, someone who couldn't protect them from the consequences of Trump's decisions. The more Johnson failed, the more Trump looked responsible for putting him in the position. Behind closed doors, Republican strategists began discussing something that would have once been unthinkable: life after Trump. Some donors were already shifting resources toward candidates who have their own identities. State leaders were quietly preparing contingency plans. And political advisors were warning that sticking too closely to Trump could put even safe districts at risk. The whispers became louder with each misstep. They questioned whether Trump still had the ability to win national elections. They questioned whether voters were burned out from the nonstop chaos. They questioned whether the MAGA base was shrinking or simply exhausted. And underneath those questions was a deeper, more dangerous one. What happens if Republicans start ignoring Trump permanently? The answer was already playing out in real time. Indiana lawmakers ignored him. JD Vance couldn't rescue him. Mike Johnson failed him. His online threats didn't scare anyone. Democrats were gaining momentum, and the GOP, whether quietly or openly, was beginning to step away. Trump is watching this erosion with a mixture of anger and fear. The political power he once wielded effortlessly is slipping. The party he once dominated is drifting. The fear he once commanded is dissolving. And the silence he used to interpret as loyalty now feels like abandonment. This isn't a single moment of weakness. It's a slow, grinding collapse of the structure that made Trump powerful. For years, Republicans followed him out of survival, but survival has changed. Now the danger isn't defying Trump, it's staying too close to him. Even Trump can see it. His meltdowns are happening more often. His allies are failing more frequently. His attempts to bully lawmakers are falling flat. And the Republicans who once feared angering him now fear something else entirely. The voters, the general election, and the consequences of being tied to a man whose influence is fading. The Indiana collapse wasn't just a bad day for Trump. It was a turning point, a reminder that political power isn't a permanent possession. It must be maintained. And Trump hasn't maintained anything. He assumed loyalty where none existed. He assumed influence that had already evaporated. He assumed the party was still his, long after the party had started moving on. What we're witnessing now is the unraveling of a political figure whose power depended on the illusion that he was untouchable. Once that illusion breaks, everything else breaks with it. Trump isn't losing because Democrats outmaneuvered him. He's losing because Republicans have stopped listening. And once a leader loses the loyalty of his own people, there is no comeback strategy powerful enough to reverse it. The silence in Indiana said everything. Trump's era of fear is ending. His grip on the GOP is cracking. And the party he believed he controlled is finally learning to live without him.